All right. Welcome, everyone. We are excited to host you for today's featured presentation about how professional services organizations can break the profitability myth and uncover true growth potential. I'm Vivek Gopalpuria, Director of Product Marketing at Replicon, and I'm joined by my colleague Rajiv Borisan, and we'll be your host for today. A quick look at the agenda. We will start off with talking about the general dynamics in the professional services industry. We will then introduce the concept of profitability myth that most of the professional services business today see in their organizations. We'll then look at what best practices can be used to break this myth and uncover true profitability. We'll also quickly run through a customer story, which will be followed by a live demo and then a Q&A session. A couple of housekeeping items. You'll be on mute during the presentation, and there'll be a Q&A session at the end. But if you have any questions at any time during the webinar, please feel free to submit them in the questions box, and we'll make sure they are answered. All right. So if you look at the services businesses today, they are facing increasing challenges, and let us talk about a few here. The overall growth in the industry has been stalling as seen in the numbers. There is an increased pressure on margins due to a talent war going on and an increase in headcount because companies are expecting and hiring in expectancy of new projects coming in that has the effect of increased resource costs. But on the other hand, there is increased pressure on billing due to innovation happening all around. The competitive scenario does not portend well either. There is intense competition because of growth in smaller firms that are offering boutique services, which is seen in the reduction in revenue from new clients and the decrease in bid to win ratio. There have also been changes in the customer behavior. They have more buying power. They do not want to take on risk, and this makes the contracts process more difficult. The modeling and enforcement of contracts is getting complex. The old time and material, fixed bid, or even milestone are no longer being used. There is more use of value-based pricing and other complex contracts. And there are additional compliance challenges that are being introduced because of the revenue recognition standards that are getting enforced. So what should services businesses do? Well, services businesses need to realize that resource time is literally equal to money in their business, and how they manage this time has a resounding impact on their business profitability and other key metrics. For most services businesses, resource time costs anywhere between 60 to 80% of operating expenses and nearly 100% of their revenues. If you look at a typical 500% services business, it has more than 1 million hours at its disposal. And that number is a mighty 104 million hours plus at 50,000 employees. But do services businesses understand where these huge chunk of hours are going? Can they at any point in time tell what a bunch of 1,000 hours got them in terms of, say, revenue or profitability? These are difficult questions to answer. Because if you look at it, services businesses base all their key metrics like resource utilization, service profitability, project margins, delivery, forecasts, and others on a baseline provided by billable hours. In doing so, they are not looking at a major chunk of hours that the employees are still paid for because they do not have a system of record around employee time. And here is an interesting issue with that. And this is something we see with our customers, and our customers always talk about it. And we have realized this internally at Replicon in our professional services team too. So now we dogfood our own system. So a semblance of control and profitability perpetuates through the organization because your baseline is so much smaller. but things do not add up at an organization level. Without a system of record, the metrics that the professional services business is looking at are a myth. A 1,000-person organization has about 2 million hours and looks at a fraction of it to bill their clients. Not accounting for the entire pie means they are looking at the wrong number and missing out on hidden revenue and profitability potential. This is the hidden truth that each one of you should consider. Let us now look at some of the best practices to bust this profitability myth and uncover hidden revenue potential. First of all, for any business, if you can't measure something, you can't manage it. So to start managing profitability, services businesses need to account for 100% of their resource time and be able to add context to it. We'll look at each of these in more detail. They should leave no stone unturned to aggressively streamline quote to cash workflows. They need to establish and adopt service benchmarks and use them in their day-to-day operations. And finally, they need to plan, and replan while executing based on real-time information. Accounting for 100% of resource time with context means that services businesses should look for solutions that automatically harvest this information from their existing ecosystem. Because having your resource participate in the time management process for projects, for the clients, is the biggest point of failure, as we have realized. Services businesses should look for professional services automation solutions that utilize technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, and platforms that are truly global and mobile for best results. The context that is associated with resource time brings visibility into what outcomes are being produced using the time, and then this can be used to redirect time if needed towards outcomes that can produce greater value. What we have seen with our customers too is it is always better to stay away from purpose-built apps and advantageous to adopt a global scalable solution, as customization can get really expensive and time consuming. Services businesses should look at streamlining the end-to-end workflow, starting right from opportunity management through to invoicing, with resource time being at the core. Having standardized processes around resource billing and time improves consistency and transparency. We see that at a lot of times exceptions or errors are handled by quick adjustments to the billing information. This is a big no-no, and businesses need to go back to the source and fix them right there to make sure this does not happen again and there is a true account of data. Finally, while it seems easy to do things outside your professional services solutions over email or in Excel, but it is dangerous behavior that has long-term effect and reduces transparency and auditability. So avoid it at any cost. Coming to benchmarks, benchmarks are a must for any kind of services business, and these need to be established for the entire organization. The easiest way to start doing this is connecting all time to outcomes. It is necessary to establish KPIs that make sense for your business, but there are usually, and these are usually around utilization, profits, margins, work in progress, and among other things. You also need to measure these across teams and locations and continuously calibrate to see how everyone is doing, and use these benchmarks to drive collaboration in real time across your business, making it a well-oiled machine. And finally, you need to literally predict the future or do the next best thing, plan and replan when you see changes. Use historical information to inform your future. Plan right from the opportunity stage. Have clear estimates for all metrics as you start planning, and use real-time information to bust the hidden bench and profitability myth. To achieve this, Professional services businesses need a new way to think about and manage their service business. They need a professional service automation which has resource time at its core. This core is what we call our time intelligence platform. It provides the true baseline for all service businesses by connecting resource time to outcomes and supports the key professional services pillars like service delivery. It helps you streamline project delivery, resource allocation with advanced project tracking and workflows. Enables you to plan and manage billable targets at the resource level and enhances resource utilization. Drives visibility and control over budgets, estimates to complete, and all other key metrics. Helps manage billing contracts, client billing invoicing, and revenue recognition processes. And around growth management, it helps you plan and service growth, resourcing, and skill management needs. And this is why thousands of best-in-class businesses leverage our platform because it evolves with your services business globally, offering scalability and agility. It offers the ability to model unique service business workflows like service delivery, billing, revenue recognition, or any other unique workflows that your business might have. With 100% time collection and automatic harvesting, we guarantee that there are zero revenue leakages. Uh, with with your ability to connect time to outcomes, you are able to maximize service profit potential, and you are able to achieve lower total cost of ownership with a unified platform, and it helps you achieve quick ROI. Here is a quick customer story for your reference. NSE is a major IT services provider. They had manual and ad hoc processes around managing operations, and this led to lack of visibility into resource utilization, work in progress, and directly impacted their bottom line. They needed a single source of truth centered around time to weed out cash flow and billing issues and to streamline end-to-end billing workflow management. Replicon PSA provided a unified system to manage granular resource time data at every step of their professional services workflow. They were able to tweak, measure, iterate, and optimize their services and transform their business. With that, I hand it over to Rajiv for a quick demo of our advanced solution. Rajiv, over to you.
Thanks, Vivek. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. Vivek, would you be able to let me know if you're able to see the dashboards okay?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. So hi everybody, my name is Rajiv Boris. I'm part of the solution engineering team here at Replicon today, and I plan on walking us through the Replicon platform to really help us understand how can we truly bust that profitability myth. So the time intelligence platform really helps provide granular visibility into time as a strategic business asset. We really help better provide visibility into all time-related metrics, and in doing so can provide a clear, distinct picture around profitability. This includes billable engagements with some of your external clientele, perhaps your non-billable engagements as well. And like Vivek had described, this is the factor that's often overlooked. A number of organizations don't take non-billable time into account, and this can include things like business as usual activities, administrative duties, meetings, bench time as an example. And Replicon can harvest time information in a number of different ways through our platform directly as an example, using our mobile apps. Anytime, anywhere, any place, through structured data as well. We have the ability to import time from multiple data sources using our API as well. And really what we're going to talk about today is how can you truly account for the full 20/80 hours for every single employee within your organization. Like some of the stats that Vivek had described, if you have 100 employees, that's already around 200,000 hours, 500 employees is 1 million. So how can you really have true visibility into what it is that your team is currently working on? You can turn to the Replicon platform to help you with this because we can ensure that you can stay compliant as well. So What I'm going to be doing today is talking about a couple of different collaborative workflows, if you will. We're actually going to walk through a couple of different user personas just to give the team some context around the different types of teams that typically accesses our solution. So we're actually going to talk about this from the top down today. We're going to first talk about what somebody within the leadership team within your organization would be interested in seeing from a profitability analysis perspective. They just want to be able to quickly assess and understand the health status of the business, if you will. They also want to ensure there's a tight collaboration with the project managers and the resource managers within your organization as well. These are the individuals that need to be involved in planning, execution, delivery, analysis, and they also need to be able to collaborate with the finance team. So I'll actually be saving this for a little bit later in the presentation as well. When finance logs into our system, they can now ensure that all of the billable hours has been reviewed, approved, pass it off for invoicing, and also to recognize revenue. This is a very important thing, especially with the change in some of the accounting standards recently, ASC 606 and IFRS 15. So you can turn to the Replicon platform to help ensure that you're compliant with those revenue recognition standards. This is something that's going to be mandated for public and private organizations. And if your organization is not up to date on it, there could be some hefty fines. So you can turn to Replicon to help you with this. So let's actually start, like I said, from the top down. We're going to first describe how a CFO or somebody within the leadership team, in this case, Paula Baumer, she actually logs into the system and she's able to assess all of the clients that she's currently working with from an organizational perspective. And what's very helpful about the Replicon platform is that we can help assess areas of interest. So if she's interested in saying, okay, I'd like to see the number of projects that are underway, including the number of resources. I'd also like to be able to understand all of the hours, labor cost, and billables that we're actually spending with each one of these clients. It's very straightforward to be able to see these types of things. We can also prioritize things. As an example, if Paula wants to be able to see, okay, which one of my clients have been producing the most amount of billables, I can actually see that the Advantage Technologies client has. So this type of information is invaluable to at least assess what's going on at a high level. The senior leadership team within the organization typically wants to be able to see things and consume a large amount of data very quickly and easily. And this is where the Replicon dashboards can help provide that type of visibility. So these dashboards really provide good visibility into understanding things like profitability, billables, annual program costs as an example, and even utilization across your employees. Now, these dashboards are completely configurable, so it's up to your organization's preference around what types of visuals you'd like to see. But why this is helpful is because it allows you to drill into key areas of insight very quickly and easily. As an example, if I'd like to be able to determine which one of my clients have produced the most amount of billables, I can see that Advantage Technologies had as of Q4 of last year, and I can actually see Big Game was second up in line. And if I want to be able to drill into this to determine which one of those projects have contributed towards those billables, I can actually do so. I can see now that the customer billing system project had produced the most amount of billables in November of 2017 of last year, and my automated reporting and dashboards project produced the least amount of billables. I can now drill into this to see which one of the resources that were working on that engagement had contributed to that overall billable portfolio, and I can see that Tammy is the case here. So these dashboards are a very good way for the leadership team to be able to consume large amounts of data and understand what's going on very quickly and easily. Once again, the billing system project was my most profitable, and if I drill into that, I can see how my resources had contributed to that profitability. So this is very helpful information to be able to drill into key areas. These dashboards can be saved and exported and even distributed, but this is a very good method for us to be able to consume large amounts of data. No matter how many ongoing projects are underway or billable engagements, we can easily help your organization consume all of that information using a number of different flavors, if you will. And remember, this is just an example. A number of organizations leverage our API to be able to export this data out for external reporting as well. So Replicon's API does enable your organization to do exactly that. Now, Paula wants to be able to just collaborate with the project manager now to be able to drill into some particular areas on those billable engagements and really assess what's going on. So what I'm going to do next is talk about how that project manager can log into the system, how they can also collaborate with the resource manager to understand resource availability on any one of these engagements. So I've just logged into the system as Annadelle to talk a little bit about that. She has a similar route to Palma to be able to determine all of the clients that she's working with. But when she drills into any one of these clients, for example, Borison Consulting here, you'll actually notice that there's a graphical representation on all of the hours, labor costs, billables, and even resources that you're spending at the client level. We can break this out in a couple of different views, daily, weekly, or monthly views as an example. And of course, we can help understand which one of the projects had contributed towards that overall overview, if you will. So in this case, there's 4 projects that are underway with this particular client. The users can once again update exactly what it is that they're interested in seeing. So perhaps they'd like to be able to understand the total contract value. Perhaps they'd also like to take a look at all of the ongoing project codes. And remember that if Replicon is importing this information from an external system, such as a project management system, we certainly have the ability to be able to do that as well. And there's another way that we can also help consume this information. There's also an element to understand overall revenue that's actually been recognized on each one of these engagements as well. So this is a very important thing. We'll be talking about how Replicon can help your organization recognize revenue a little bit later in the presentation. But for me to be able to visually see this information at a very high level almost immediately is invaluable insight into ongoing billables, labor costs, and even recognized revenue. So let's take a closer look at one of these projects, for example, my website redesign project. And what Anna is interested in doing now is she'd like to be able to review all of the metrics that are underway with this particular engagement. So if we dive into some of the project details, there's a number of different elements that we're tracking here as well, such as project codes, which clients you happen to be working with. What Replicon can also support is the ability to have a single project underway with multiple clients, and we can actually have this split over different percentages. So in the event you have one project that might be similar across multiple clients, and perhaps you want to be able to build them, including the billables and the labor costs out at different rates as an example, these are the types of things we can take into account. And of course, even if it is a single client, we can also support that as well. There's also a number of other attributes in here, such as who that project manager is. We can also allow something called a client representative to be able to log into the system. So we often hear that external clientele wants to be able to have visibility into the ongoing billables, and we can even configure them in the system to be involved in the approval workflows, and of course, driven through very strict permissions. So they would only be able to see the ongoing projects that are underway for themselves as a client and nothing else in the system. And there's a number of other elements in here as well. For example, breaking out CapEx, OpEx expenditures as an example. The billing type, I'll actually talk a little bit more about this as well, but Replicon has the ability to accommodate a number of different complexities around the billing models of this particular engagement. So this one, there's an element of this project that does consist of time and materials, and I'll talk about how that all comes together. There's also the contract value and also what we call revenue contracts to help understand what percentage of this I can recognize as revenue. And we can also even allow your team to upload information into the system. So if there's some supporting project documentation that I'd need to be able to upload, here's a sample statement of work to be able to take that into account. These are the types of things that we can easily provide visibility into on the Replicon side. So your organization can upload any other type of relevant documentation into the system as well. Now, if we talk a little bit about the particular tasks of this engagement, Replicon can really provide a lot more granular visibility into what areas of the project your team is incurring some of these billable and non-billable hours. And even some of these tasks may consist of non-billable things. So I do have the ability as a project manager to actually go in here and define which one of them is going to consist of billables and non-billables. And what everybody will notice as well is that we typically utilize the tasks on these projects to be able to track things like milestones or deliverables. In this case, I actually have a design milestone, a compilation milestone, build, and testing as well. And each of those consist of their corresponding tasks and subtasks. So this is a very good way for us to be able to take into account what areas of the project is your team incurring more time, what areas did we incur more labor costs or billables, where did we incur more non-billable time on this engagement. This is the type of granular visibility that we can provide. And we can also initiate workflows around these milestones. So as an example, upon milestone completion, perhaps we're going to send this off to invoicing or billing. Perhaps we're going to recognize a completed milestone for revenue. So we'll talk about how that all comes together. But we can take into account a number of different factors for that, such as estimated time to completion, work in progress, and Replicon can even help you build a labor forecast plan through the resourcing capabilities, and I'll talk about that shortly as well. Now, the other pivotal component here is the actual billing contract. Now, Replicon calls a billing contract basically the ability for us to model exactly how this engagement needs to be billed. So we've often heard that customers have a number of different complexities when it comes to billing arrangements on their projects. Perhaps a portion of it is going to be based on time and materials. Perhaps a portion of it is going to be based on flat or fixed rate expenditures. Perhaps there's non-billable areas within that engagement that we have to take into account. So the billing contracts engine that Replicon actually has allows us to model these types of workflows. And in this example, we're taking a look at some simple scenarios. For example, there'll be a T&M hourly rate, but I'm also going to have a markup of my expenses. Any expenses that are incurred on this project is going to mark up 30%. So what Replicon can also do is take into account project expenditures. So this can include things like travel, billable or non-billable expenses. And even if you already have an external expense solution, such as Concur, we do have the ability to import those expenses into our system as well. And the value here is that we can help provide holistic overviews on your project, all of the labor costs that have been incurred and all of the expenses as well, to help ensure that we're making the appropriate deductions against the budget as an example. We can also take into account time off requests. Replicon, being a time intelligent platform, is truly a platform. And as a result of this, there's different elements of the platform that we can utilize to help service organizations. The time off request becomes very ideal when we're talking about resource allocation. If a user or a resource is going to be away or they're on vacation, I'd like to be able to understand that before I staff them. And we'll talk about that shortly as well. But as everyone's able to see, we can actually build a number of different elements around this particular engagement. Perhaps I'm going to bill out a flat 5,000 if the milestone has been completed in this case. And everyone would also see that we are an international platform. So we do have global customers that are utilizing us. And we can support multiple languages, currencies, time zones, and even different holiday calendars for each of those regions as well. And this way, when each of those users in those respective regions log into the system, they will be able to see all of their localized settings. And everything else that we're taking a look at here is completely configurable. So if there's anything else that I'd like to be able to model as part of the billing contract, I can. So for example, I'd like to state that upon project completion, I'm going to bill out another 10K. This is the types of variables that I can take into consideration. And remember, these two elements here, the billing contracts and revenue, this is very much controlled through permissions on our system. So oftentimes we hear that the project managers might not be involved in doing this, but they'd like to be able to at least see it. So we can give them read-only access rights, whereas people in finance, they're the individuals that might need to be able to go in here and define attributes around the financial metrics on these engagements. And as a result, we can give them the ability to do so as well. So the entire Replicon platform is driven through permissions, security controls to help ensure that all of the individuals have access to all of the relevant areas in the system as well. The other portion is also understanding percentage of completion when it comes to revenue recognition. Once again, this is a very simple example where we're recognizing the total contract value based on the project completion. We can also take into a number of other variables here, such as work in progress, other types of calculations that needs to occur, estimates to completion, actuals to completions. As long as we model that as part of what we call the revenue contract, Replicon has the ability to ensure that all of those hours has been properly accounted for, and we can ensure that prior to us exporting this out to the accounting system, that all of those calculations have been performed on our side. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is now that Anna has completed what she needs to do, she's also the resource manager within this particular organization. So she needs to be able to collaborate, whether it's an external team as an example that needs to be able to staff resources on those engagements. She can actually turn to those individuals to be able to do exactly that. So we'll talk a little bit about what we're taking a look at here. What Replicon's platform allows your organization to do is really understand resource availability, Do I have enough resources currently available to work on these engagements? Do I not? Do I need to consider staffing additional resources? These are the questions that we can help provide visibility into. And if we take a closer look at what Tammy's working on as an example, we can easily understand percentages of her overall time broken out into daily, weekly, or monthly periods. And we can actually quickly assess things like she's actually overutilized in the month of July. This is what this little red indicator states. We're also going to be tracking time off requests, what we represent in green, and even those company holidays as well. This is something that the resource managers needs to be able to take into account. There's also an element of skill set tracking in here. So the value that Replicon can help provide is that if I'm looking for a particular skilled resource, I can define different types of skills and skill levels as well. So why this is important for your organization is because we can now help your team understand what types of skills do you require on your projects, what types of skills have historically incurred the most amount of labor cost or produced amount of billables, what types of skills are you going to require from a capacity planning perspective on your project pipeline. These are all questions that Replicon can help provide visibility into as well. And we can even help plan your organization's projects a little bit more effectively through what we call placeholder assignments. So once again, a very close relationship to placeholders against those skill sets. We very commonly see this tied to business roles. So I can see that my dashboarding project requires 2 RFP experts. I can now actually check to see which one of the resources in the system has the ability to be able to staff that particular placeholder. And of course, we allow you to drill into specific areas. Maybe you have different types of skilled resources for RFP experts. Maybe you want to look at different organizations or regional offices within the actual organization or different business units or departments. We can take all of those things into consideration as well. So now that Anna has completed what she needs to do, she's pretty much defined all of the attributes around her engagements. She now can pass off information to the finance team when it comes to billing. So what I'm actually going to do next is log into the system as somebody in finance who needs to be able to review all of those billable hours and now export this out for invoicing or billing and also recognize certain aspects of that engagement for revenue as well. So I'm actually going to log in as Robert California, and he will actually be able to take a look at the billing overview. Now, when Robert signs into the system, he can actually have a little bit of a different view on what's going on. This is more of a cash flow dashboard, if you will. This is a very good way for Robert to be able to understand, okay, which one of my clients in this case, here's a breakout of all of them, have I not yet invoiced? Which one of these clients are currently sitting in a draft status for invoicing? Which invoices have been issued or paid? So these are the types of things that Replicon can either track in our system, or we can form a very tight integration with your accounting or financial system to be able to inform them of exactly these types of things. And we can actually take a look at this over any given time periods. You may have different clients that need to observe different billing cycles. Very straightforward for us to be able to take that into consideration. So if I'm looking for year to date as an example, we don't have a whole lot of activity here in that case, but this is very straightforward to be able to drill into key areas of insight that are relevant. So what Robert wants to do is actually visit something called the billing workbench. What the billing workbench is in Replicon is it allows individuals in finance to be able to get a holistic overview on all of that approved billable time in the system. Of course, they're able to update their overviews to reflect anything that's relevant to them. Perhaps they'd like to see tasks or milestones that have been completed. Perhaps they'd like to see the billable rate amounts in the system as well, so they can update their overviews to reflect this. They can take a look at this over particular date ranges, perhaps by certain clients or any of the projects that are underway with those clients. So if I go ahead and take a look at all of the billable times for Advantage Technologies, I'm able to get a breakout of exactly that. Now, the other component to this as well is that Robert might be ready to start billing, but there might be some additional approval workflows that need to be executed before Robert can do this. And Replicon can help accommodate that as well. So I'm just going to peek under the admin layer for a moment here to explain what I'm talking about. What Replicon can support is something called a billing process. And what that means for your organization is that we have the ability to be able to model different types of approval workflows, not only for billing, but even during timesheet submissions as well. So Replicon calls this intelligent approval routing. And the reason that's the case is because we can take into account a number of different conditions or variables when it comes time to sending this off to the appropriate individuals for billing. So in this particular example, I actually state that anything above 10K, which is my high amount approval, will need to go through some type of a different approval workflow. Alternatively, I can actually set different types of approval workflows if I'd like. Maybe there's a 1-stage or a 2-stage approval. The point here is that this is completely configurable. So no matter how complex or no matter how many different types of users or business units within the organization needs to be involved in reviewing and approving these types of metrics, you can turn to Replicon to help support those types of complex approval workflows. This is very important because this way we can ensure that all of the relevant individuals or business units are kept appraised on exactly what's going on in the system at any given point. Okay, now if we just go back to that billing workbench that I spoke about earlier, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to indicate a particular project that I'm ready to start billing for. So let's say it's my sales enablement project. I can go ahead and do a search for that and update my workbench to reflect that information. And now what I'm going to do is I'd like to start billing all of the time for my design task. So I'm actually going to state that here's some time for that particular task. We'll just select a few line items for now, and I'm actually going to indicate that I'm ready to build these selected items. The moment Robert executes this is when we actually execute that approval workflow. And that approval workflow that I'm describing is around the different types of individuals or business units that needs to be involved in reviewing these metrics prior to it being passed off. So in this scenario, we're actually taking a look at a number of other things. What is the status of some of these? Are these been finalized or ready for invoicing? What projects do we want to be able to take a look at this for? Let's take a look at the sales enablement project that I just triggered. And what you'll also notice as well is that Robert can also very quickly see, does any of this fall to his responsibility or anybody's responsibility? So we utilize the billing process workflows to be able to hold users accountable to understand which things require their attention or somebody else's. And once we actually execute this, for example, we're going to submit these off and execute that approval workflow. We can review what that approval workflow is once again here. So individuals in finance knows exactly who needs to be involved in approving these types of things next. And just for simplicity's sake, on today's overview, I'm just going to state that Robert can approve everything. He's a super user, so he's actually going to indicate that he's ready to approve these metrics out. And he can even override some of these metrics if necessary. So if he needs to change this to 5K, he can. He can go ahead and approve that as well. It's now sitting in a ready for invoicing status. And when we actually visit the invoicing area, Replicon can support 2 workflows here as well. Either Replicon can issue the invoices directly from our system. Alternatively, your organization can use this as a staging environment, and we can simply export this information out into your billing system as well. So you can leverage our API to form a tight integration with some of the other systems within your organization. And if I were to state that I'm ready to add an invoice now, I can now indicate the invoice number. This is the number that I'll be passing off to the actual billing system as an example. I can now indicate what client I'm ready to invoice for. So if we select Advantage Technologies once again, we're going to pull down all of the metrics for that client specifically, billing address, payment due days, payment terms, date of issue, all of that fun stuff. And now what I can start doing is start pulling in the line items for the information. There's my sales enablement project, including the overridden values here. I can now go ahead and add these line items into this particular invoice. And once again, I can even start overriding things or add additional line items. So if I actually state in this example that there's going to be a service discount, and I'm going to state that we're going to be deducting $500 in this case, these are the types of things that I can do. I can also add some commentary in here if I need to. So if I need to be able to state something, I can. And I can also add any external or internal notes. And what will happen next is that when I'm ready to actually send this off, I can first of all preview how this is going to look before I send it off to a customer. Of course, your company information will be in here, including the payment terms and things like that. But this is the type of invoices that your customers can get directly. Alternatively, we can use this as the staging environment like I described. This is actually sitting in a draft status right now. And once I issue this invoice, we're tracking the status of each of those invoices. So now this is sitting in that issued status. If payment has actually been made, we can even track that, including the payment date as well. And any of the actions that are occurring here is what's going to be updating those overviews that we were reviewing earlier. So this type of information is going to be key when it comes to ensuring a holistic workflow for the invoicing and billing process as well. Now, just another component behind this as well is what we can recognize on these engagements for revenue. This is another very important aspect of the solution. And to really help ensure those accounting standards, Replicon can ensure that all of the variables are taken into account in that revenue contract I spoke about earlier, and we can ensure the calculations are performed before we export it out into your accounting system. So in this case, Robert is able to see that as of, let's say, June 16th, we're able to see all of those projects that we've already recognized. In this case, there's 4 of them, recognized for revenue, and there's still area for recognizable revenue as well. They can also update their overviews once again if they're interested in saying, you know, what is the program perhaps that this is underway with. They're able to update this information. They're also able to create a revenue run, is what we call it. Basically, what a revenue run is that this is how the your team in finance is able to stage what needs to be done before it gets exported into the accounting system. So this is actually something that's sitting in that draft status now. We can override certain things once again. Maybe I need to round these up. You know, 9685 here is an example. So we're still going to track what that original value was, what the change metric was. And now that I've made the appropriate changes, I can actually export this out directly into my finance system. So what Replicon can do, of course, is we will ensure that the export that we produce will be formatted to ensure quick import into your financial system. So in this case, it's a very simple CSV. You can then just throw the CSV into your accounting system, and we can actually update the general ledgers within your application. Alternatively, we can also mark this as complete as well, so that we can officially state that this has been recognized. Perhaps the accounting system will inform Replicon for this as well. So as everyone's able to see, we provide a holistic overview and a very collaborative workflow from your leadership team to the project managers all the way down to billing. We also want to ensure, of course, that all of this information is accessible from the reporting side. We spoke about dashboards a little bit earlier, but this is another way that Replicon can produce this information. There's a number of reports that your organization can run at any point in time. You can even create report content from scratch. There's a number of templates that we have defined to help you indicate what it is you'd like to report on. If I am interested in taking a look at a revenue recognition summary as an example across all of my ongoing engagements, I can go ahead and do so. I can run certain filters on this. If I can also just run the report to see all of that information. In this case, here's the 4 projects that are underway. Here's all of the revenue that we've recognized now and previous revenue from beforehand. All of this information is accessible to me, and we can actually allow your team to export this information out of our system into CSV, PDF. You can print it or email it as well. You can even schedule these reports, very powerful. This way, that information will automatically be sent out to whomever you'd like within the organization. You can actually indicate exactly who, how often, and in what format they receive it in. And this way, they're getting the latest information sent directly to their email inbox. So Replicon can really provide holistic reporting across all of the different attributes in our system. There's a number of different reports that your team can run. If you'd like to understand project burn down as an example, these are the types of things that we can very quickly provide visibility into. And let's take a look at this for a project specifically. But a number of our customers turn to us to help ensure that we're reporting on all of the relevant data points. And of course, the reports themselves are very configurable. You can search for any metrics that you'd like. Perhaps you'd like to see what client this is underway for. You can introduce your own custom logic in here as well. So the sky's the limit on the reporting side, but we certainly ensure that all of these metrics are available to your team. So to summarize everything we spoke about today, the Replicon Time Intelligence Platform will be your organization's single source of truth for all time and services metrics, breaking that profitability myth, enabling collaborative workflows. We provide end-to-end workflow around project planning through resource management to help build those labor forecast plans, real-time visibility into project burn down and statuses, intelligent time harvesting while ensuring data quality, and intelligent approval routing, streamlined approvals into your billing or financial or accounting system, leveraging our web services. And in doing so, we bring transparency and then accountability, help increase profitability, decrease labor costs, and truly help bust that profitability myth. So Thank you everyone for your time on this part. That concludes the actual product demo. I will be passing it off to Vivek for closing comments.
Thanks, Rajiv. That was a wonderful demo. Before we open up for questions, a quick look at our professional services automation benefits that our customers have realized and how we have helped services businesses like yours decrease revenue leakages. We have helped them with improvements in resource utilization between 5 to 10%, overall streamlining of their professional services workflows, and helping them manage their compliance risks to global accounting standards like revenue recognition. With that, I open up the floor in your as part of your organization. If you see the profitability myth and how your services businesses might be thinking about solving this. We would also be interested in talking about revenue recognition and how your businesses are looking to manage the compliance with these accounting standards. We will send out a recording of this webinar soon, but please feel free to reach out to us for any concerns in the meanwhile. That brings us to an end of this presentation. Thank you all.